Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Starr, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. Heart Warriors is a series I've been guided and inspired to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata Judah. Kata Judah being this beautiful sacred masculine rock formation behind me, and it's very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine side. So what I'm here to do is to give a platform to men so they can share with the other men in the audience their journey into the heart, their highs, their lows, tools, practices, wisdom, insights, knowledge. What have they picked up from their personal experience that they can now share with the other men walking this journey? And of course, us women who are walking right there by their sides. Today's guest is a man living in Hawaii, and his name is Joshua Hathaway. Now, Joshua is a dynamic coach, public speaker, and he is able to gently and humorously dismantle people's bullshit. So, really excited to be talking to Joshua. He's also a student of philosophy and psychology. He's a rites of passage facilitator, and he's also into martial arts and lots of other things that we will find out hopefully during the interview. So thank you for being here and enjoy. Joshua, welcome to Heart Warriors. How's Hawaii?
Aloha. Oh, Hawaii is so wet right now. It is outrageously wet right now, but it's beautiful as always. And grateful to be here, Gemma. Thank you so much for having me in this space to have this conversation. I so appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had a look at your website and I've seen that, you're so um, prolific in all aspects of, that you can bring to this conversation. So I'm sure it's going to be a
Hmm.
good one. But let's start with getting to know a little bit about you. But I like to find out about the inner man. So when you drop all your labels, what's left inside?
Hmm. At this moment, when you ask me that question and I reflect and I let go of all of my sense of identity and all of who I think I am and what I think is happening here, I just noticed this like a radiant, loving fire that radiates out from my belly and envelops my heart, and I feel a deep sense of dynamic peace is what's left in this moment. You might ask me in 10 minutes, and it could be different, but
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. Thank you. So let's find out how you got to be the man you are today. When you were a child, little Joshua, what was his biggest challenge he had to overcome?
Hmm. Gosh, that's a great question. I feel like I'm still him, and he's still working on it. Um, gosh. One of little Joshua's greatest challenges throughout his life was learning how to cooperate with systems and structures that were not designed for his kind, and that were not operating in ways that are necessarily really favorable for his greatest well-being, and not available for the fullest expression of who he was and what his gifts were. Yeah. So that Joshua was, in the dean's office more days than not. That Joshua was getting into all kinds of trouble all day, every day, by being a pretty innocent and benign version of himself that just really didn't fit into the boxes that he was handed to identify with, and it's very much a challenge of my life today, a very sort of um, acutely in some ways. Yeah.
What's the what incident comes to mind that represents this, and how did you navigate that as a young boy?
Great question. Um, for whatever reason, the most prevalent image that comes to mind when you ask that question, whether it's the best answer to it or the best story I have about it or not, is I remember when I was in 8th grade, and I had with a small group of some of my friends, convinced our school to create a more advanced math class for us when we were in 6th grade. We were like, hey, you got to let us take this next math class up. And they were like, well, you won't have anything to take in 8th grade. And I'm like, well, we were just like, well, this is what we got. And so we got to figure it out when we get there. So we had the dean of math of our school district come and teach uh, geometry to us in 8th grade, high school geometry to us. And he was a really lovely guy, and very capable of conveying concepts, but he was not a teacher. He was an administrator, right? They didn't have somebody in the junior high school sort of district to teach us this math. And so we ran into all kinds of interesting issues. And I managed to sort of stay afloat in the class, even though I was a horrible student and I wasn't good at like going home and doing my homework. I was just too busy doing other more interesting things at that time in my life. But I was able to stay very relevant in the curriculum. But I just couldn't sit still. I just couldn't shut my mouth. I just couldn't, you know. And I remember there was one time when something possessed me to get up out of my seat without asking and go open the door and crack it and stick my ass out the door and fart out the door. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm trying not to disturb the class with this fart, but I'm like trying to stay as close as I can here. And everybody starts laughing, and his face just like starts like, he was like lava, just like red, starts running up his neck. And he was a red-haired guy with like super pale skin, you know, and you could just see like his whole being just like a circuit blew in that moment. And he just like pushed me out the door of the class and said, go to Neto Torres, who was the dean of students. He's like, you're out of here for the day. And, you know, looking back on that experience, I just, I can't imagine what was really going through my mind, because I can't remember it as, you know, accurately enough, like why I would make that scene at that time, you know. But clearly I was wanting some attention, you know. I was needing some form of attention that I maybe wasn't getting in other ways. I was bored and wanting to entertain myself most of all. I think a lot of my antics were truly to just entertain myself, because of um how easily I would be bored in class, because just I pick things up quick, you know. And so but I do just, it makes me laugh to see how unfit for civilization my adolescent self was, and my young self was in so many ways. He was very capable of kind of replicating all of the knowledge that I was being taught and sort of feeding back to people what they needed to see in order to pass me and through school. But such little interest in that whole game, and so impossible to control, just impossible to control from a very, very young child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, you were obviously, you know, you've come in as an enlightened being to develop into an enlightened being, and so already as a child rebelling against the system. So a lot of parents are allowing their children more freedom now, and as they become aware of the indoctrination and the structure, they're struggling with how much freedom and how much, you know, children need to follow the education system. So I've got two questions for you. One, how did your parents either support you or not support you with your rebellion against the structure? And then I'll ask you to talk specifically to parents about what you think the balance is.
Hey, I'm so honored and surprised that you would ask this question. It's a beautiful question. It's very close to my heart. Thank you. And, you know, I'll say that my parents did the best they could as two people who had a child the first time they ever had sex at 19 years old, as high school best friends, not even like, you know, like lovers, right? Like my parents did such an amazing and resilient job of raising like a surviving like creature that I am, with sort of the start they had. So thank you, mama, my mom, Jackie Wyckoff, my father, Barry Hathaway. Like, so blessed, so very blessed. And they were intelligent but not educated, and so they followed the structure. And I actually, after middle school, I chose to go to an all boys Jesuit high school because I was so attracted to it. I drove past it on my way to like the most ghetto junior high school in all of the district that I bust into intentionally because they had a computer magnet program that they were doing special programs for. And so I kind of took the reins of my education, and they trusted me with that, and they let me do that. And that was like the path that I thought would get me to being on the best football team, on the best soccer team, and a few other things that were the most important things to me. And there was a way of like, I saw that beautiful campus and the everything that I saw about it as like a bastion of structure that I didn't have so much growing up because my mom was a wild creature off on her adventures, and I was raised mostly by my father, who was like a great provider and worked full time. And so I was always in daycare, or babysitters, or after school care and summer camps. And, I got as much of his beloved attention as he could give. And so I was given the mostly standard route. That said, when I accidentally conceived a son at 24 years old while I was still an undergrad in college, his mother and I managed to really think up around certain values of ours. And so we started our son in Waldorf school. And the Waldorf curriculum is very, very clear about really giving children in the first 7 years of their life the only opportunity they're ever going to get to not think in symbols, but to have their hands in the world and to dream their way into the world and to be in a world of imagination and not numbers, to be in a world of words and not letters, to be in a world of like beautiful art pieces and a garden that they get to tend and chores that they have in their kindergarten. They're not doing worksheets ever in kindergarten in Waldorf, right? They're engaged with the world and hearing stories told to them. So we invested everything we had as a relatively like poor family living in subsidized housing to be able to get our son in the Waldorf school and to be able to support that journey for him. And once he hit first grade, he had a lot of conflict with his teacher because, very much like me, nobody was going to control my son. You had to become an ally to my son in order to like to collaborate with him, right? And so because of that disconnect, we took him out of the Waldorf school, and we homeschooled and then eventually unschooled him through 8th grade. And we found a charter homeschool program that would allow us to get credits through the public school system so he could earn his way through and get all the paperworks. But that was also very available for us to creatively construct his curriculum and fit that curriculum into the state standards in a way that was supportive for our son. And, I worked my tail off through those years to make sure his mom could stay home with him. And he had an older sister who was 8 years older than him, a half sister. And so through that journey, we really learned to trust our son, to trust like what his intelligence wanted to like reach out for and grasp and engage with, whether that was hours and hours for weeks on end of just sitting in his room listening to the Chronicles of Narnia on audio and playing with Legos, right? As a 9-year-old, right? Like, okay, I'm just going to trust that like this is what is the most meaningful for him, and he knows better than I do what his developmental sequence is. It's built into him, right? And so my son really got into theater. He really got into the primitive arts. So he was into primitive skills and building structures and making fire with your hands. He was a blacksmith by the age of 13 and was making these gorgeous knives and wrote and executed beautiful screenplays with his friends and just so many stories and he wanted to have the high school experience. And so he's like, Dad, I want to go to high school. I want to have that experience. And I'm like, of course you do. That sounds amazing. So we found this charter school for him. It was like 40 freshmen. And, he was like, Dad, I'm probably just going to like get like straight C's in high school and then go to LA and act afterwards. And I was like, that sounds like an amazing high school career, son. Like, I support you, like enjoy that. Like, do it your way. Like, this is your canvas, bro. And it turned out that his freshman year, he just got completely ignited with a passion for learning academically, which he had never had before. He had a passion for learning, no doubt, but he would never, he never understood the necessity for the discipline of doing homework. And so before his freshman year, he's like, I'm so behind in math, Dad. Like, I've never written an essay. Like, I'm going to get hammered. This is going to be, I'm scared. And I was like, hey, like, those are legitimate concerns. And the only reason that you don't have more math skills is that you've never done math homework. I think once you start doing that, it's going to get better fast. And so sure enough, within the first semester of his high school career, he had found a cadre of other really smart kids. And most of these kids were coming out of a homeschool lifestyle. This was a charter school specifically, kind of to cater to some alternative families. And he just got so lit up. He graduated high school with a 4.4 GPA and a 1560 on his SAT, and is riding a full ride to Stanford right now, like living his best life. Like RAing in the dorms, great group of friends. They play volleyball every Saturday together. He's a leader. He loves what he does. He's going to jump into a straddle year right now and end up in 6 years with a master's degree in anthropology from Stanford University. And it's all him. He chose every step of the way, So as a parent, like wherever you are, from wherever you're standing in your parenthood, from whatever resources you have to bring to bear, like I just ask you to like trust your children, like trust their innate intelligence and their innate health, that there's nothing that can be forced into them from outside of them that can make them healthier than having their spirit invited out from within them, and trusting that spirit to shine its genius and learn exactly what it needs to learn, exactly when it's ready to learn it, every step of the way.
Oh, that's brilliant, Joshua. What a great story. How old's your son now?
He's 21 years old. Sky is my son, Sky Hathaway. Such a beautiful young man.
Wow, amazing. Okay, let's get further on in your life. What would you say was your rock bottom moment that you had to spiral on up from? What was happening?
Hey, that's a great question. There's a rock bottom moment of every chapter. There are so many rock bottom moments. Um, you know,
Well, maybe the one that shaped you as a man the most. We're really focusing on men and
yeah.
masculinity in this show.
Well, I would say that one of my rock bottom moments in that regard then is, accidentally becoming a father with my ex-girlfriend at 24 years old, and facing, getting ready to graduate college, and getting ready to walk the world with my best friend with a staff, and like find the greatest kung fu masters we could find across the world and study, meditation and kung fu, and only to discover that I had impregnated my ex-girlfriend in the time that who I was with for like 2 months, and in like the brief amount of time that we were still hooking up after I had broken up with her, because I was clear that she wasn't my partner. Um, and that rock bottom helped me discover a lot of things. First, it helped me discover that my life isn't about me, and it never was, and that having a son who I'm 100% responsible for making sure is the healthiest version of himself, that he can be, and the healthiest version um, of our family that he can be, just put everything in perspective for me, and it felt like a rock bottom, because it was one of those moments where the whole future I had mapped out for myself was just ripped out from my hands. What I thought was in my hands, it was not. It was never in my hands. It was always in my head. But um, you know, and I had to stand up and meet the challenge of this new opportunity, and to make very delicate decisions about my proximity to his mother and all of these things that were all deeply involved in my responsibility to my child, and to what was presented to me by my life at that transition moment. And I can say that I've never done anything more meaningful or important in this life than getting to raise my son. Like there's absolutely no question whatsoever about how transformational and satisfying and deeply fulfilling my fatherhood continues to be. It just gets better and better in some ways.
Yes.
But having had that occur in a way that I could tell myself was a mistake, that I blew it, that it wasn't intentional, that I shouldn't have been doing what I did. And there was so much shame involved in creating this thing, this like miracle accidentally. And it was an ancestral pattern that I was repeating, that we figured out with his mother eventually, that like all of our parents were all accidental children within or outside of a marriage, that all of that our child was, that her daughter was, that it goes back, like we run these generational patterns. And so to be meeting that generational pattern and all the shame that I held and all the plans that I had about the life that I was going to, this amazing fantasy life that I had mapped out for myself, and having to let that all go and show up for my kuleana, which is the Hawaiian word for our sacred responsibility. What is like our sacred responsibility, kuleana? It's also our destiny, because when we embrace our kuleana, when we just take whatever difficulty is presenting itself to us and bring our absolute best, our greatest love and our greatest integrity to it, and just pull it into our hearts, that's how we create a destiny. That's how we avoid living in the fate of our cowardice and our lack of courage and our compromises in life, right? So that was a big, massive moment in my life that shapes me forever. And my dad, during the time, because his mother and I were not together during the together, we made sure to like stay connected and be allies, but we were not partners. We weren't romantic. And my dad sent me to the Mankind Project when I was 24 years old. It sent me to the New Warrior Weekend of the Mankind Project he had just done, and was like, I just had this experience. You need to go. And that was my beginning of men's work at 24 years old with a baby on the way. That became ultimately like one of the most important kuleanas that I carry in this life, is to create safe spaces for men to be nourished by each other's company and to be healed in each other's company. Yeah.
We'll get into that. I'm really keen for you now, Joshua, please, to talk to men who maybe it's not through an unwanted pregnancy or unplanned pregnancy. Maybe their dreams have been shattered these last 3 years with, what the world's gone through. Can you please talk directly to those men? And if they're still in that point of resentment and maybe, still clinging on to dreams that now don't seem possible, what can you say to those men to offer them some light on their path?
Oh, oh, my brother. I just first want to say, like, I know how it feels to be hopeless. I know how it feels to feel lost and like you failed. I know how it feels to not know how to make a meaningful contribution to your community, and to be feeling worthless and ashamed of yourself. And and I just want you to know that your value is not dependent on what you do for anybody else in this world. Your value as a human being is to take the greatest care of yourself, to love yourself, every day through making your goddamn bed and eating a good breakfast, getting a little exercise and drinking enough water. Like, if that's all you can manage in a day, just start there. But again, when you just start your body Just start there. When you learn how to take care of your body and your mind and your heart, that nothing will be able to stop you from fulfilling your kuleana. You will be so clear about what you're here to do in service of the world beyond yourself, that nothing, no force on earth can prevent you from accomplishing your task. But it starts here. And so many of us have been defined by our ability to make other people happy in some way, or to provide something for someone else. And that comes after. That comes after you take care of you. That comes after you find what nourishes your soul and makes you come alive. And so thank you, COVID, for just destroying so many of the dreams that our society just like chiseled into us about what a man should do and how people should make a living and how people should live. And I'm so sorry for all the difficulties and scary moments that it brought about, but it was a gift to all of us to find what matters most and stop chasing something that is some external reward or some fucking fat bank account, because none of that matters. What matters is, am I happy? Am I healthy? Do I love my life? And am I capable and willing to be of service to what matters most to me?
Yeah. Thank you, Joshua.
Thanks.
Amazing.
I'm just a crybaby. Sorry about my like constantly breaking into tears, but it matters so much to me, and the fate of men matters so much to me. And yeah, there's so many men's hands I wish I could have held in the right moment. Yeah. And it's something that I wanted to talk with you about today at some point, is the perceived vulnerability of men versus the actual vulnerability of men.
Please go ahead.
And the vast divide between those two. And I have the pleasure of being surrounded by really wonderful women right now in my world, just where I'm at in this moment, and where I'm staying in this beautiful temple, while I'm also working on my land and homesteading a beautiful piece of property here in Hawaii, where I'm learning how to build structures from raw materials that I'm sourcing from the earth, and building these beautiful timber frame things. But the other night, I was sitting outside as the women were speaking with each other, and I cried at how beautiful they are to each other, how sweet, how loving, how tender, how caring these women are toward each other. And I felt like a real I'd won a little like booby prize to get to be a fly on the wall for a moment when these women were completely unaware that I was be able to hear them, and they were just in the privacy of like the woman world, which is a different world than mixed company. Always there is just a factor, right? Just like the man world, when it's just dudes, it's a whole different world. But one of the things the reason that comes to mind is because these women were enjoying a form of privilege that most people don't call privilege, and that most men don't have access to. And the privilege is the ability to be vulnerable and to feel and to be soft with one another. And because all the babies are born the same. Our DNA is so like fractionally different from one human to another that it's almost meaningless. No matter what sort of like plumbing a baby is born with between their legs, like they're born the same. They're born utterly innocent and soft and deeply feeling, and they just cry out their needs like unhindered. At some point in our culture, men are trained that you don't do that, and you dare not do that for threat of violence. If you are seen as a soft one, you will be harmed in one way or another, whether it's through fists or through taunts or through all kinds of passive violences that men and women do alike to the males that express those traits, right? less and less every generation, every year, less and less, thank God. But we have 1 billion men, at least, if not 3 billion men walking around in this world who have been systematically denied the right to feel, just feel, to feel anything but rage or sexual desire. And having had very favorable conditions as a child, like I got really lucky in my family where I grew up, having a father who was a very straight appearing homosexual man who was devoted to his son and an impeccable human being in every respect. Like, I got really lucky to have been exposed to what I was exposed to as a child and given alternative experiences that are outside the norms of our society, that opened little doors for me, or cracked them open a little wider than they're opened for a lot of guys. Because I saw the camaraderie of men my whole life, men who loved each other, men who, only hung out with other men because they just weren't interested in women. you know and and so that was a gift. But I think it's really important for everyone in our society, and especially women, to understand that you have a privilege, that you have a gift, and you have an ability that is superior to most of the men that you encounter. And you have a choice every moment that you notice it, either to use it to judge and criticize and condemn that man, or to model what it means to be an emotionally mature, feeling person who can stay present and who can have compassion for somebody who is so violently trained to not know what the fuck to do with his emotions, and have to shut that down underneath porn and alcohol and workaholism and violent sports and whatever else gets us to feel some goddamn thing that is sanctioned by our society and that won't put a target on my back. Right? Like,
I love what
I set this container. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
sorry, I loved what you said about when you spoke to women, to give us an insight into that, because a lot of women watch that. But when you finished what you were going to continue on with, sorry, there's a bit of a breakup, but please continue. But then please talk to men about how they can get in touch with these feelings instead of going to sport, alcohol, pornography, whatever other outlet they're using to feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, the last thing I was going to say is this, I set this up in really stark and slightly exaggerated terms here because I want people to feel the contrast. There's not a difference between the way we were designed. This is not a fundamental difference in design of these systems. It's a fundamental difference of enculturation. It's a fundamental difference of training. And that men can be as exquisitely sensitive in the realm of emotion as women. And that does not equate to weakness in any way. In fact, our sensitivity makes us a far superior protector. Because when I sense something far off on the horizon, before it becomes a snowballing threat to my family, to my relationship, to my own well-being, when I can learn to sense at a subtler and more sensitive level, I become much more effective at responding. I become a much more effective peacekeeper in my family by catching that little behavior and addressing it lovingly before in my 4-year-old, before it becomes my 17-year-old, like, strung out on methamphetamine. I'm sensitized, I'm present, I'm paying attention. What man in the ring, in the octagon, could go numb and have any impact whatsoever? How could you ever win a fight if you're numb? Like, the most powerful warriors have always been the ones who are the most sensitive. All of my greatest martial arts teachers are just so sensitive that an ounce of pressure on them will generate a wave of force in return that's so instantaneous that it's just unstoppable, right? So I just want to obliterate any man's sense that feeling is a form of weakness. What is a form of weakness is reacting to your feelings violently. That is the form of weakness. The form of weakness is somehow projecting our feelings out onto the world around us and attacking that. What is a form of true weakness is then suppressing our feelings so that we don't feel and we're numb. We create true weakness in our lives by suppressing that and then numbing ourselves with alcohol and other things, weakening our own bodies, or just injuring ourselves like again and again, trying to prove something to the world, or pushing past the point where, goddamn brother, you just need to stop and lie down and rest for a minute. Like, you're being the last guy standing is not necessarily the best thing for you or anybody else. Like, the best thing might be for you to be the first guy to lie the fuck down and take a break, because the whole team is going to benefit from you coming back nourished, strengthened by your rest, by your being sensitive to what you need, by being sensitive to your need for some more water or a healthier lunch than you've been eating for the last however long, you know? So sensitivity is this very deep word. It's an emotional sensitivity. It's a physical sensitivity. Look, men often, in order to achieve some idea of what a lover they're supposed to be, literally numb their own dick. They literally put numbing agents on their own sexual organs, which are designed for our pleasure so that they can last longer in sex. Like, that's a legitimate strategy that many guys are using. And I just want to say that once again, like, you can be totally sensitive and be the most exquisite. In fact, only as the most sensitive version of yourself will you become the most exquisite lover you could ever be to a woman. When you are so attuned to her and so sensitive to her, and you're not in a hurry in any way for your own satisfaction, but just like sensitized to the moment and giving generously of your service in pleasure and in love. Like, that is the foundation for becoming not only rock hard and fucking unstoppably erect, but also to have the stamina to last and to experience with your partner the most exquisite levels of sexual ecstasy and connection and intimacy, right? Like, wherever we look, we can apply this balm of sensitivity and see how beautiful it is. And so that's the starting point for men. There's all kinds of practices that I can share about how to cultivate your sensitivity physically and emotionally. But before you're ever going to take the time to do that, you have to get like, it's worth doing, right? Like, you only benefit from the push-ups you do, but you're only going to do push-ups when you know that they're going to jack you, that you're going to be healthier. Well, who doesn't know that push-ups are going to make you healthier? Everybody knows that push-ups are going to make you healthier, but not everybody does push-ups every day, right? So, hey, at first we have to commit ourselves to being the healthiest version of ourselves. And the healthiest version of me does a lot of motherfucking push-ups, because, like, it's easy and free, and it's one of the most, like, fundamentally functional movements that I can do. But first step, like, acknowledge where you're numb and that it's not your fault, that you've inherited this, that we are inheritors of an ancestral sort of trauma that has replicated generation after generation. And we have the greatest opportunity of any of our ancestors right now to heal it and to not pass that damage onto our children or onto our nieces and nephews, because all children are our children and they're all looking up at us all the time. And so, to the extent that we can be the healthiest version of ourselves, no matter if it's for our children or our children, we have that kuleana. But also, I'm happy to go into some somatic practices and share with you. We could practice something right here and now that the listeners could do in their own, the privacy of their own headphones, to experience a little bit of what it looks like to thaw a nervous system that is calcified from generations of trauma. Yeah, would you like that?
Josh, I'd love that.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, I'd like to start by inviting both of us to just close our eyes for a moment and connect with the breath that is coming in and out of our body. So withdraw all of our attention from the outer world for a moment and come to this most fundamental source of nutrient, nourishment, and life on this planet for us. And just breathe in through your nose if you're willing. Easy, easy, no force. We're not Wim Hof in this thing right now. We're just noticing the naturalness of this breath that is breathing all the time, whether you tell it to or not. Feeling how it touches the spine. How it expands the rib cage and how it touches the diaphragm. Noticing how deep down into the belly the breath wants to go. And having taken just this little moment together to make contact with our breath, I want to invite you, Gemma, to just exhale all your air with me. And together, and all the listeners will exhale all of our air and hold it out for a moment. And we're going to take 5 deep breaths together, in through the nose and out through the mouth. So exhale all that air. And when I say Hanu, we're going to inhale through the nose. And when I say Ha, we'll exhale through the mouth. Hanu. To make a little sound as the air leaves your mouth. Hanu. Feeling the vibration of your own voice in your body. Hanu. Feeling the tension in our shoulders and jaw just melt on the exhale. Breathing all the air out. Softening. 2 more. Hanu. The sound wants to come out of your body, whatever movement wants to wiggle or jiggle or wave in your body as you breathe is so sacred and so welcome. The last one, deepest one. Here we go. Hanu. Take another sip. Hold it. Open the heart. Just feel the ecstasy, feel the joy and the bounty of breath in the body, of a sense of presence right here in the sensation of being alive and human in this moment. I'm so curious, Gemma, what that's like for you in this moment, how it feels to be in your body having taken those breaths.
Yeah, it feels good, very connected. I'm a yogi, so sort of used to, the breathing and the connection, but it takes me right back there into, near the heart space. It's, very connected. Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And there's no more, I don't think there's a simpler or more valuable practice for any of us than these. Then for me, it's been very refined into like 5 deep breaths. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, if I notice myself having any less than a fucking amazing time, like any less than feeling happy and like thrilled and curious and connected to pause, to take a pause and take 5 deep breaths. If I feel too serious about a product, like a project I'm working on my house, or some relational difficulty, pause and take 5 deep breaths. If I'm with someone and all of a sudden, after enjoying their company, there's a little like moment of like tension, or I can see that I'm getting frustrated or they're getting frustrated, I'll just say, hey, are you willing to take 5 deep breaths with me? And we just shut the fuck up and we just breathe together and we feel. We come back to a resource nervous system and a body that's like breathed again, and there's just a little space. It's not gonna we're not gonna like finish those breaths to somebody having waved a magic wand and made something that's uncomfortable, but we are going to have the resource of a little more peace, more oxygen, so more clarity of thought happening in the mind, more relaxedness, so there's less blood being constricted in the nervous system, making it harder for us to be creative and dynamic in moments of difficulty. We're just those 5 deep breaths alone are the beginning of a journey home to what it means to operate one of these carbon-based vehicles, and to learn how to use them for the highest purpose they were designed for. And it's so simple.
Yeah, I was
And
going to
those
say,
of you who I'll just say this last thing. Those of you who are listening, if that was nourishing for you, I challenge you in this moment to set an alarm on your phone that goes off once a day, at some time during the day when you think you will be available for it, that just says, take 5 deep breaths. Just start with one time a day, pausing and taking 5 deep breaths, and see if that little seed you plant will grow in your life to being even more.
yeah, so beautiful. Thank you, Joshua. I was going to say, validate what you said, like I was thinking, I feel a bit clearer and lighter. And it's just like sort of you just shifted up an octave in the vibrational spectrum. It's just like, oh.
Yeah.
So easy
5
and
breaths,
beautiful. Wow. Awesome.
right?
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's like putting your debit card into the great ATM of Mother Earth and making a withdrawal that's completely free. All it costs you is a moment of remembering and 2 minutes of like focused awareness,
And
right? And
anyone can do it. You can be
anyone.
sitting, lying, anything. There's not really any excuses
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And as a somatic psychotherapist, as somebody who's been working with clients really consistently since 2008 with my master's degree, working with people who carry deep traumas, working with men and women who've been profoundly traumatized by horrific family situations, and who are learning how to trust life again, and how not to react violently when life feels threatening. Because in a traumatized nervous system, life feels really threatening a lot of the time. And the only way people have learned how to deal with that sense of threat is either to attack or withdraw or freeze. There are all these built-in responses. And so the breath is the fundamental resource for starting to unravel those reactive patterns. Because if I can take 5 deep breaths between when I get triggered and then when I respond to the stimulus of that trigger, I promise I am at least 10,000% less likely to do violence of any kind, whether that's violent words, calling somebody a name, or saying something that I'll never be able to take back and I'll regret later, or whether that violence is throwing something or doing physical harm to someone. Like, to the extent that we can take 5 deep breaths between the moment of stimulus and the moment of response, we are becoming peacekeepers in this world. And that is what men are designed for. Men are designed to make a peaceful realm for the women to give birth to children, to raise our young healthy and strong and loved. And I truly believe that, and every man gets to define that. Every person who identifies as a man gets to define what that means to be a protector for themselves. But you are here to protect something really sacred and beautiful. And protectorship never requires us to do violence. It's just the opposite. You can't protect violently. You only destroy things violently. You can only protect by bringing a peace and a groundedness and a clarity about your own values and mission that is bigger than any perceived threat, that is wider than any sort of sword or arrow that might appear to be coming at you. That's true protectorship, and it starts with the breath, with deep breath.
This is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to expand on this because traumatized men is a big issue. And as you said, you know, a lot of men are holding on to this deep shame, guilt, anger that is being projected as violence, either in families or in society. Now, we've touched on the breath work, which is, and I loved that tool that you gave us, you know, to pause and in between the trigger and the response, take 5 deep breaths. But men are probably, if they're deeply traumatized, are going to need more than that, I imagine. What if they've never been to any men's work or therapy, or they're just sitting here, just in this emotional lack of control, I guess? What can you say to those men? How do they start addressing that issue to become these beautiful, peaceful protectors?
There's a couple pieces here. Thank you for asking that question. I don't have any answers. I need to say that up front. Like, I don't know anything, but I can tell you what's helped me. And that's all I can only testify to what has been of benefit to myself and the people I have been close to. And the first thing is to spend time in the company of men who you trust and respect. Just be honest with them. And there's a culture of hiding among men that we amplify the things that make us look good. Every human does it, right? It's a human thing. We amplify the things that make us look good in the eyes of the people that we want to be respected by, and we completely minimize the things that might not make us look good in the eyes of those people. And so the first and foremost thing is, like, find men who you respect. Find a man in your life who you want to be more like, and like spend more time with him. Like, seek him out. Invite him out for a beer. You know, invite him to the game. Like, whatever you could do from within your like world. If you see a man you respect, then try to spend more time with him and get to know him. Because it's only in the absence of healthy male relationships that men, you know, ultimately resort to violence. It's to the extent that men have healthy circles of other men who care about them, who check in with them, who we talk about what's difficult and our wins together honestly and openly. And guys who I've made commitments to, like, fuck, man, I'm committed to this goal. I'm going to run this half marathon this year by April. Like, and who check in, like, hey, how's your regiment going? And to discover their. And a woman is an ally and a partner, but a woman cannot be that force in a man's life. Absolutely. Especially his partner. If you're looking to your partner to be your emotional anchor, you're poisoning your relationship. She needs to be your woman. She needs to know and feel like she's your woman and you have her back. Your men are the one who are there to hold you. And you know, you get to be that guy who reaches out to guys you care about and say, hey, how's it going? No, really, like, how's it going? If you want to be a man who's in circles of men who give a fuck about each other, then be a man who gives a fuck about the men around you and reach out and check in. Invite guys to do things that are meaningful, right? It's in cultivating like healthy relationships with other men. And hey, if you guys need to drink some beers while you go at it, fuck, just get it. Please don't be irresponsible. There's nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, I have found that having spaces where I can be sober with my brothers, where I'm not under the influence of alcohol, has a unique benefit that drinking with my friends or watching the game with my friends or whatever other awesome things I could be doing with my friends have, right? And if you don't know what that's like, it might be valuable for you to find out.
So good. So good, Joshua. I just love this conversation. So we've got about
Yay.
35 minutes or so left. Now, I know that there's things that you want to say, I'm sure. So I'm going to open it up now to what needs to be said from your specific experience and knowledge and wisdom that we can tell the men here watching, share with the men.
Well, I want to share something that um, might even be challenging for you to hear. And I'm gonna front load that because it's something that has been very a really fascinating course of contemplation and observation for me in the world that's come to a head in very specific ways in my life currently. Because the other rock bottom, maybe the most important rock bottom I've ever been at is the one that I'm at now in a certain way in my life. But I want to share a contrast with you that helps to give us a glimpse into the biases of our society and the way that men, the end of the stick that men get of this particular bias, which is that I can be in a marriage where my wife calls me a worthless piece of shit every day, where my wife does not respect my boundaries and punishes me when I don't give her what I want, what she wants from me, emotionally through words and name calling and all kinds of things. I can have 10 years of psychological abuse in the form of the feminine shadow of violence, which is through words and through subterfuge and through manipulation, right? And we can all admit this openly because we all do it. We all have this the shadow of feminine violence within us, and we all do it in our own ways. But for the sake of contrast, I can be in that relationship for 10 years, daily abused by my partner. And if I one time explode and strike my partner one time, if I strike her one time and leave a mark on her, she can take my home. She can take my family. She can take a huge portion of everything I will earn henceforth in my life from me. And I just want to, like, there's no man I know who would trade a good smack in the face for 10 years of psychological violence, right? Like, there's nobody I know. Please hit me in the fucking face if I'm being stupid, but don't violate my consent. Don't project your emotional wounding onto me daily and take no responsibility for it whatsoever. And I, as a man, have no recourse. If I'm in, all I can do is leave a marriage, which is, of course, recourse. Of course, I can set boundaries and say, I'm not willing to be talked about like this. I'm no longer willing to have this conversation unless you're willing to take 5 deep breaths with me. I can set all kinds of boundaries, but men don't have those communication skills because they become instantly emotionally hijacked because they have no basis for knowing how to deal with their emotions. And so we live in a society where there's great inequity. There's tremendous inequity, and men represent way more power positions in the systems of our society than women do, and that's atrocious on a certain level, and maybe perfect and appropriate on another level, because I don't want to get into that piece, but what I want to just draw like this awareness around is that personally, if I had to choose between having the privilege of occupying sort of hierarchical levels of systems of our society or just being able to feel my feelings, if I had to choose between those two privileges, you got a choice coming into this world. Either you're going to get to drive yourself insane and most likely kill yourself achieving all this stuff that men are supposed to achieve in this world. And people are going to listen to you more. You're going to have more say in sort of what the team does. But you're not going to be able to feel anything. And you're going to always lack this fundamental aspect of your person. Or you can be a sensitive, soft being who is given permission by your society to feel, to have emotions, to express those emotions. But you're going to be second in line when it comes to power hierarchies and other things. There's no question what I would choose, knowing what I know now. No question. But we don't have to choose between them. Ultimately, the choice is only a way of identifying that our culture is shot through with forms of inequity. And that there's this generalization that the inequity is that men have everything that's valuable and women don't. Like that's the gross generalization, right? Like guys won patriarchy and patriarchy is destroying everything. No, we all lost. We all lost patriarchy. It was a loss for every one of us in different ways. And we're not going to restore that by leaping into matriarchy and now let's just have all women presidents. And no, like that's not how it works. Like balance is balance. Balance can only be struck when the masculine and the feminine lean into each other as allies, as co-creators, instead of competing with each other for relevance and resources, you know? And so I just ask anybody listening to really review what matters most to you, to your soul, and to put down anything in you that has written off the other sex. Because I know plenty of men who've written women off. They're just like, it's not safe for me to be around women. I'm not safe because women project these things onto me. They violate my consent. They do all these things. And then they talk about me after the relationship in ways that are so completely out of alignment with what actually happened and just ruin my reputation because they're emotionally harmed or damaged because I chose not to be with them. Like this has happened over and over in my life, right? In my personal life. And so we all have the forms of violence that our gender has been geared towards. And most of the violence that happens in society is not the masculine violence of outright face-to-face physical violence. All of that emerges out of subtler forms of violence, the way we talk to each other, the way that we think about each other, the stories we tell about what's motivating somebody or what they actually did, or all of that subtle stuff is what gives rise and explodes in the like bursting pimple of like a physical violence. But it was under the surface all the time. And so my hope is that we as a society can reckon with true justice and to find ways for all of us to be accountable to creating harmonious and peaceful relationships, and not to be blinded by some bias that just because somebody hit someone, that it's worse violence than words. Because I see words do more violence every single day of my life than I see fists. And if all of us can become more impeccable with our words and devote ourselves to speaking words that are only truthful and honest, that are empathetic, and that are direct and open, that gives the other person a chance to respond, our whole world will transform immediately, significantly, to the extent that we're willing to take 5 deep breaths together when we start feeling something, right? Just truthfulness and deep breaths. That's the recipe of my book. And thank you for inviting me to share that piece. And I'm so curious what that evokes for you as a woman to hear a man speaking this way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Joshua. This is huge because I see this a lot as well. I would like to think that I'm not part of that equation. I've worked through a lot of stuff. So speaking, but no doubt I was that woman at some point and very unaware of it. Because to be honest, I was in a physically violent um, marriage. So I know what you're saying. Well, the emotional abuse is worse than the physical abuse. But I'd like you to talk to men who are in those relationships now, men who aren't responding with physical violence. They're holding themselves back, or maybe they have a couple of times, or whatever the situation.
Right.
I want to get the viewpoint from a man when he's in a relationship with a manipulative, emotionally abusive woman, mentally abusive, that you said, with words, with manipulation. If he's in that situation now, please talk to him, Joshua, and give him some light or a doorway or something that he can help
Thank
you.
you. I mean, the first thing is like, please don't resort to physical violence. That will never make matters better. Like, I hope nothing I have said is used as any form of permission for somebody to do non-consensual physical violence to another person. That's never okay. But if you're in a relationship with somebody who is not is abusing you with words, abuse with words is name calling. Abuse with words is constantly questioning your value in some way. Abuse with words is withholding, affection at times when it might be natural to give that affection when you've just done an act of service that's really lovely or something, right? Like there are so many subtle forms of withholding and abuse that happen emotionally in a relationship. But if you're in this kind of relationship and you're recognizing some of these patterns, I think it's really important for you to first acknowledge to yourself that you are worthy of respect. That nothing that you've ever done makes you deserving of any form of violence ever. Like the worst thing you did does not make you deserving of being met with violence in return. And that's the great horror of our world and society, is that violence is met with violence at a systemic level instead of met with compassion and like, oh, how do we heal this person who would never have done that if they were happy, healthy, and whole? So just know, first of all, that you don't deserve violence, and violence is never the answer. Second of all, you get to set boundaries. And the first kind of boundary to set is that when somebody says something that hurts, you let them know. Ouch. It hurts when you say that to me. I don't like it when you say that to me. Can you please never say that to me again? Or will you please say something kinder to get your point across right now? Because you deserve to be treated with gentleness and kindness and respect. And men aren't allowed to say ouch. Men are supposed to be invincible. We're supposed to have fucking armor on. Nothing can penetrate me. So I have to play it cool in order to live up to my own idealized version of a man, while a woman is physically abusing me or verbally abusing me. And I have been verbally and physically abused by women in my life. I know more men personally who have been physically abused by women than I know men who have physically abused women. And I know my men, and 100% the case. And so, but that's not physical abuse. A man would almost never reports that. What a shame. What a shameful thing to report. But a woman, as much shame as that is, it becomes a badge of courage and honor for a woman to report that in a certain way that it is not for a man in our society today. And so coming to terms with these things, and I'm not on anybody's side. I'm not trying to say anybody's doing anything worse than anybody else here. I'm just trying to say we're all fucking this up in our own ways. And if we all don't get better, then we're all fucked, because we're all in this together. There's no Herland where ladies are going to go off and create their own universe without men. And there's no man cave that's going to last more than a generation. We're here. We got to learn how to collaborate and do this together. So let's all identify the things that nobody's allowed to do. Let's make agreements in our relationships and create protocols and crystal clear agreements where we say, this is how we talk to each other. And if we ever talk to each other this way, we have to admit that we're violating an agreement in our relationship. And we need to just pause and be accountable for our own behavior. And that's really the only way that I see healthy relationships forming. And that leadership, that's masculine leadership. The feminine is the flow. The feminine is just responding to the moment, and whatever comes, it comes, and it's beautiful, and life is nourished by it, and it's fertile, and it's sexy, and it's everything. The masculine is like, no, but we have standards and fucking accountability, and we make rules, and we keep the rules, because when we don't keep the rules, then people get hurt, you know? And only with those two leaning equally into each other and celebrating each other and just like reverencing each other for the beauty that each other uniquely brings to that. And we, you know, I think survive as a species at this point in our pathological like human civilization. That's my rant.
Joshua, I just love what you are bringing to this conversation. So many pieces. You know, you're number 74, Heart Warrior, and these are subjects that haven't really come up before. Now, there's another one I want to ask you because this is important too. Now, you mentioned what happens when a couple breaks up and the woman continues to attack the man or attack his reputation. Okay, what do you say to men that are currently going through that at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I want to say that you're not alone, brother. That there are a lot of men in this world who feel like they did their best in a marriage, who feel like they gave everything they had to give in a relationship, and it didn't work out for one reason or another. We weren't compatible. We weren't the best for each other. We weren't contributing to each other. And now as a man, many men find themselves then in the situation of having to like devote tremendous amount of resources to this woman who is actively trying to take what he has and certainly not like loving and respecting and appreciating him for what he contributed in the context of the marriage. And we have to remember that that's happening while at the same time there are a lot of dudes out there who've never met their children, who've never shown up for the children that they've created in this world, who are prancing around like boys, not providing for the life that they brought into the world. And so, you know, none of us is a victim of the other sex, but we all victimize and perpetrate in certain ways in our lives. And so I want to say first of all that like to the men who are struggling to recover their integrity again and recover their trust in women again, to recover their sense of safety in the world again, and to like figure out how to carry on with life with the responsibilities that they may be sort of called upon to hold to their ex-wives and children and all those things. Like, please know that like your kuleana and your contribution and providership for your ex-partner or your children is sacred. It's a sacred task. It's sacred. And how much or how little, the courts will decide. But know that like that's important. But it's not the only thing that's important. What's really important is finding a way to, especially if you have children, to set aside the emotional pain of the breakup and all the stories and judgments and did wrongs that we're holding against each other, and to make sure that we never ever ever use our children against each other. We never withhold our children from one another, or we never use our children's opinion or our opinion of the other parent to influence our children's relationship with their parent. That even if that parent from our own eyes is a fucking douchebag, if they're not abusing your children, then make them sound like the fucking greatest superhero that ever lived to their kids, so that their kids can grow up like respecting and loving and hearing about what it's like to have a parent who stands up for what's good and right, you know? And so, like, please stop abusing your children as a form of trying to do violence to somebody who hurt you in the past in that way. And yeah, that's the fundamental is be a person of integrity. Be a person of integrity. Like, men thrive in integrity. And if you know your principles and you know what's right, and you goddamn know what's right, if you're a man listening to this, don't fuck with me about that. You know what's right. And sometimes you have the courage to do it. And sometimes in the past, you did not have the courage to do it. And you have suffered the consequences, undoubtedly. And so have moral standards, have values and terms in your life. Know what you stand for. And know that the more you embody that and live that in your own heart, in your own body, then the more attractive you become to a person who's embodying those values too. But you can't just order one from the catalog because you have enough money. You have to live it. You can only attract what you are fully embodying in your life. And you'll always find the right partner at the right step of the way for your growth edges and your personal journey. But integrity is where it starts and where it ends for men.
So good, Joshua. You know, when you said that so many men have lost trust in women, you know, that's so sad. And I know it's on the other end as well. You know, humanity, much of humanity is so broken. And as you said, we've got to come together, you know. Have you got any more tips for those men who have lost faith in women? Because there are good women around. And there are a lot of
Oh
women
yeah.
that are also healing and trying their best as well, you know.
Oh
So
yeah.
what can you say to those?
Yeah. Well, what I want to say is there's this great mistake that I learned, the logical fallacy that I learned in my philosophy studies. And it's fair to call me just like a applied philosopher. I've always been a philosopher, and I got a degree in psychology, which is just a form of philosophy. And I just get to like apply philosophy to helping people transform their lives, right? But there's this mistake that we make. It's a bias called generalization. One duck shits on my car, therefore all ducks are going to shit on my car, and I hate all ducks and I'm afraid of all ducks, right? If we overgeneralize, running the risk of pathologically wrong about it and suffering the consequences of that. And I want to say that just because, even if every single woman that you've ever been with up until now was in some way just batshit motherfucking crazy and, just drove you nuts and you couldn't live with her. And I'm speaking to men, and she wasn't crazy, and I'm not trying to generalize, but men know what I mean. Just because everyone that you encountered so far didn't work out doesn't mean that the next one won't. In fact, they were all preparing you to be the man. Women, same. Even if every man you've ever been with was a fucking liar at his core, because he was taught to perform and he was taught to hide all of his imperfections so that he could succeed in life. Even if every man that you've been with was just like grossly insensitive in the moments you needed him to be sensitive the most. That all was just preparation for you to get clearer and clearer about what you are for, what you're for, what you're calling in, what you desire. And you will call in what it is that you embody. If you want an honest person, be motherfucking honest. Be exquisitely honest. Say the thing you know is going to make everybody uncomfortable if it's true, and then deal with the consequences every time. And that's so much of relationships are built on lies. People get together and they perform this identity for the other person that might get them into bed with them or get them into a committed relationship with them. And then all of a sudden, like, all the things that I wasn't being honest about are eventually going to come out, because you can't hide from somebody that you are inside of or who's inside of you on a regular basis. Like, it's crazy. You ultimately can't do that. And so, be honest from the beginning. If you want to build a beautiful relationship, build a relationship based on radical honesty. And man, I'd much rather invest like half a date in somebody who can't handle the fact that I am absolutely not monogamous than waste 10 dates on somebody who I'm really hoping will warm up to the idea someday that maybe they won't be the only one in my life. Oh my God, like, who are we kidding here? Let's be honest about who we are, what we're for, what we want, because I guarantee you, like, no matter how fucking weird it is, like, if you want to get like attached at the hip with somebody, if that's your truest dream and you want to have like matching tattoos, like, you'll find that person. Like, they're out there for you. They're totally there. Like, there's so many kinds of people and so many amazing, like, so don't compromise. Don't compromise what you really want, without even, giving it a good try, being real about it. And that means expressing our desires. It's one of the greatest arts of humankind, is to just learn how to say what you do want and just ask for it. Just ask for it, whatever it is, outrageously, and be willing to hear no and just like shrug and be like, okay, I thought I'd ask, like, it's not illegal to ask for anything ever. And in fact, the better every one of us gets at asking for what we really want, like, baby, I could really use a blowjob right now. Are you down? Like, you never know. Like, it's and more and more of the women that I get to experience in my life so want to receive all of my desire and my requests, and are so eager to be in service to my joy and my love, because I don't obligate them to any of it, and they know that they're never going to be punished if they say no. They know that I'm never going to try to manipulate them into giving me something that I want, and trust that if they want to give it, they'll give it. And oh my God, there's nothing sexier in the universe than knowing that your no is pre-assured, and everybody just gets to express their desires and deal with their, like, well, I wanted that, when they don't get what they want. But it's just feelings, and they go away like really fast if you don't like hook into them with all these ideas about like who that person is because they didn't give that thing to you, and how much they owe you because you did that thing last Thursday for them. It's just like, it's such divine comedy. It's such divine comedy, really, at the end.
Oh, it is. Joshua, we're going to start wrapping up now. So, first of all, I'd like to please share with people where they can find you. And after that, any
Yes.
final thoughts, words, and deliver a final message to men, please.
Hmm. Well, if you want to find me, you have to come to Mokuoke'awe, Big Island, Hawaii, the kingdom of Hawaii, and come to the remotest part of the largest island of Hawaii, at the feet of Tutupele, the great goddess of all volcanoes, who resides in Halima'uma'u, Kilauea volcano, which is active right now, churning lava. You'll have to find me somewhere in the on the lava. I'm building I'm building garden beds with lava rocks, and I'm building homes out of local endemic hardwoods, and learning how to utilize all of the resources that grow right here on this island to make sure that no mother and child will ever have to question whether there will be a roof over their heads. If you want to find me, you'll have to come here. And it's a great and sacred mission to do so. But I welcome you, anybody who wants to come and find me here, to come and malama aina with me and put your hands in the soil. We can sing some songs, and we can make the land just a little more beautiful together, if that would bring you joy. And if you want to find my avatar and lots of the words that I've spoken and some videos that I've made, then you can go to my website at masteryourbullshit.com, and you can check out my YouTube channel, also Master Your Bullshit, to see all kinds of transmissions that I've given, and all kinds of communication training, and teaching us how to reprogram the way that we've been trained to communicate, so that we can do that in a more elegant and effective and collaborative way. And all kinds of advice and support for men around how to cultivate like truly deeply outrageously satisfying romantic and sexual relationships in whatever configuration is your jam, honestly and authentically. How to cultivate a sexual vitality that is so like unprecedented that you will be unforgettable to any woman who gets to the like honor of lying in your bed. And those are just a few of the things that I feel passionate about, because what I know, and just on that last note, is that like well fucked women are happy women, and happy women make a happy village. And I don't know too many really truly happy women who are not well fucked. And it's just the case. And women can fuck themselves well, and you don't need a man to fuck you. But man, there's something really special about having that with another person. And and so if relationships matter to you, and you want to just test the waters and find some resources that might help you in the privacy of your own home, please check out my Shift Happens webinar and learn a little bit about how to unpack some of these feelings and needs and observations and requests, and become more artful at communicating what you need, and become more of a leader in your relationship around impeccable communication, and taking the deep breaths when the deep breaths need to be taken as men. And I also, for women who might be listening, I do really deep work in helping women reprogram their reflexes around a strong man, because you can have all the sort of like counseling sessions you want with a woman, or with like an old grandpa sort of psychologist, but the moment you are in an intimate container with a man who turns you on, all of a sudden there's all this chemistry happening in your system that you just don't even know how to deal with, right? And it brings up all this attachment stuff. So I love working one-on-one with women and with men. I do that remotely, and I do private retreats and personal immersions. um, so those are some of the ways that you can get connected to my work, and um, and get a little bit more of this if you liked the taste you got here on this call. And a message. Was that the last piece? Was there something
Yeah,
in between?
final message to men who are maybe struggling. I know we've covered a lot of it, but it's always the last question of the podcast
Yeah.
when I ask a man to deliver a final message to men. So whatever comes up for you, Joshua.
Yeah. Well, let's see what wants to be spoken here. Yeah. My final message is thank you. My message to men is like, God damn, man. Like, thank you for showing up in such a confusing time on this planet. Thank you for being here and being the one who is being blamed in our era for the atrocities of our grandfathers and grandfathers' grandfathers. Thank you for your courage to stand up and rediscover what it means to be a man after generations of um, of trauma in men, generations of violence. Thank you for taking whatever step you can take today to make your life just like 3% healthier, whether that's taking 5 deep breaths before you go to bed, or drinking another glass of water before you hit the sack, or choosing that like slightly leaner, healthier meal over the fatty thing that you can get to satisfy your taste buds. Like, thank you for every act of courage that you make every day. Thank you for everything you've already done. And thank you for the man that you're becoming, because he is he is such an exquisite man, and he's so needed by the people around him to to be a healthy family together again, a healthy community together again. So thank you for anything that you get to take away from this conversation and apply to your life um, to be an agent of more beauty and strength and protection and providership and laughter and multiple orgasms in your life.
Oh, amazing. I'm blown away by, well, about you and the quality of men coming through now on this show. I mean, even from the beginning, but I feel so honored to be in this place and be witnessing, this conversation from you and, and all the heart warriors giving their time and their wisdom, giving back to men because they've walked the path. Oh, there's one other question I always ask if you may. What part does the heart
Sure,
play?
sure.
What part does the heart play in this?
Oh, the heart leads. The queen chooses the path, and the mind figures out how to get there. That's it. Just listen. The queen is what guides you. Like, let the heart guide you. Don't be guided by what you think you can accomplish. Be guided by the heart. The heart is a yes or a motherfucking no. The heart is open and like expansive and will never tell you you can't accomplish that. So if something's telling you that, that's not the heart. The mind is just there to figure out like what the next step is. Oh, okay. So if I wanted to get there, then I need to sort of go to left here. Okay. The mind is the servant. The masculine is the protector and the actualizing agent of the heart, which is the sacred feminine. And so when we can learn to honor the intelligence and intuition of the heart, and which women are representing for us on a cultural level, when we can learn to listen to women and the wisdom of women and learn to trust women and their intuition, even when your mind doesn't understand why, like shut up about why, just like listen and find a way to be an agent of the most beautiful possibilities the heart can utter. And I think we're all going to just be way happier that way.
Wow, wow, wow. I love it so much. Thank you. Oh, I love it. Well,
Yeah.
Joshua, thank you so much for what you've given to this series. Absolutely mind-blowing. Such incredible information. Thank you.
Gosh, Gemma, it's my pleasure. And I just want to say, like I wish I want to interview you now. I'm just like, what possessed this woman to just like devote so much of her life to understanding men and to lifting up the experience of men? And whatever you're doing, like keep doing it. Whatever, like I'm so honored by you, and I'm so grateful that you have made this your passion and are lifting up the voices of men and creating these conversations. And I can only imagine how many lives you've touched and how many people that your devotion has like given a scrap of hope to, and is maybe keeping some men alive. Like I can imagine that there are men who might not be here if they hadn't heard something from your podcast at the right moment. And even if that's just one man in the whole career of your podcast, like you've done a great service. And I appreciate you deeply, and I honor your kuleana, and you fulfill it with such joy and warmth and beauty and openness. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you everyone for being here, for watching. If you could like, share, subscribe, and we might be inviting Joshua back for Man Speak because he has a lot of incredible things to say. So lots of love for
Okay.
now. And I'll be back in a couple of days, I think, with another episode of Heart Warriors. Bye. Stay on, Joshua.
Aloha.